Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And Tyler's got something cooking. You've been cooking.
I've been cooking a little bit. I want to do kind of a series of things, and this is sort of the first episode.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm ready. I'm so ready to hear about the series that you're going to talk about. I'm not going to say anything, but I am going to say I goofed, gang.
Oh, no.
That's would be what our correction segment is called. I goofed. Mike goofed, gang. That's what it should be called. Okay. So I actually noticed this right as I was putting the episode up. And then I was like, it was like midnight the day before it comes out. And I was like, I'm not going to re-edit this again. And I posted in our Discord, I got something wrong. You should try to find it. And then in the natural case of doing that, I got two things wrong. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, the Duck Hunt dog is definitely a playable character in Super Smash Brothers. It's called Duck Hunt Duo in the PAL versions of the game, but it's just called Duck Hunt in the North American version of the game. And then the actual thing I was looking for that I got wrong is in the arcade version, when you shoot the dog, multiple things happen. First, it has gunpowder show up on its face. Second, it ends the round, and then the dog comes out in crutches and says, shoot the ducks, not me. And then it goes away. So that's actually what happens. I said he disappears. I was wrong. So just wanted to clear that up. That's the segment. It's over. The Mike Goofed segment is over.
We need like a button for that. Mike Goofed.
Mike Goofed. Mm-hmm.
There we go. For me too, because I definitely have been wrong.
Nah, you've never gotten anything wrong a day in your life.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say, but it's not true. What does get me about this one is that we were like, the dog should be in Smash Bros. He's been in Smash Bros. Like he was in the Wii U Smash Bros.
Yeah, like it shows how much Tyler and I have not played Smash Bros. Since probably I haven't really played it a lot since Melee. I played Ultimate a little bit with some people on the podcast actually, but I actually, you know what? I should have known because he was definitely in there then when I was playing it.
I played I played a decent amount of Brawl when it came out. I really loved Subspace Emissary. So that was like the last time I really spent any time with Smash Bros, I'd say.
I do like Smash Brothers though, as a whole series. It's great.
Yeah.
So have we talked about that? Have we talked about it?
Probably not.
Okay. We got to look into that. I already have an idea for next week though. So sorry, everybody.
All right. But what we have talked about is handheld gaming, and we've talked about it in various forms. Today, I kind of want to focus a little bit on the Game Boy, and I've got like sort of a plan for like a series of episodes here. I'm not really exactly sure how it's going to evolve just yet, but I want to talk about like the stories behind the handhelds that we know and like why certain ones may have won out over others and like comparing them and how they've affected us like as a society of like giving us something to do in downtime in a way that like people did not have before that. So this is like the first part of this. And if you have thoughts on how this is going, please let me know. And I will learn from that and we'll bring them into future episodes here. So Mike, I want you to do something here. Picture
I'm ready.
Sicily, 1923.
Oh, we're going back.
I'm just kidding. That's okay. I got all my Golden Girls spec scripts mixed up here with my Codex scripts. I'm so sorry.
Dude, that's a classic problem we both have when we write scripts here.
Golden Girls all the time. There's a joke in here about like lateral thinking with Withered technology, probably, but I'll leave that up to the listeners to figure out. We don't finish scripts here. No, we don't even finish our jokes here. So anyway, picture it. The Persian Gulf. 1991. You're digging through the wreckage of a destroyed building. Yeah, the 80-year jump, 70-year jump. So you're digging through the wreckage of a destroyed building. Everything's charred. There's dust and ash everywhere. The smell of burning plastic fills your nostrils, and you see it. A warped plastic shell. Buttons burnt to a crisp. You can kind of see the circuit board sticking out from underneath the screen. You pick it up. You dust it off. Surely this thing's done. There's no way. There's no way this thing still works. So you reach in your pocket, you pull out your trusty Tetris cartridge, which you always carry with you everywhere.
I carry with it everywhere. Yes. Everywhere I carry it with me.
Yeah, and it is Tetris, right? Or is it a different game for you?
Well, honestly, it would probably be Super Mario Land, if anything.
Okay. So you slot your Super Mario Land cartridge into this Game Boy, and you flip the switch. You turn it on, and the Nintendo logo starts to drop. And as it hits the center of the screen, you hear the familiar chime of the original gray Game Boy startup sequence. And there it is. Pokemon Red version. No, we're in 1991. Actually, that game's not out yet. But you see, I guess, what is the title screen of Super Mario Land?
I think it just says Super Mario.
Super Mario Land, and there's
that's it. Yeah, it's just standard. Title screen.
For me, this is obviously because I carry my trusty Tetris cartridge around. I see the spires of the Tetris home screen here. But what's incredible is that the thing still works. Now, maybe this is an anomaly. Maybe one shouldn't expect their Game Boy to like survive a bombing. But still, that little thing just keeps on chugging. This is actually a true story. This Game Boy that is like burned into the history of Nintendo lore here. In 1991, a U.S. Army medic named Stephen Scoggins brought his Game Boy to the Gulf War where he was serving. It got caught up in a bombing, but once it was removed from the wreckage, it still worked. It did not look good, but it did still work.
When it worked, that's the thing about Game Boys. Those old Game Boys, they last forever.
Yeah. Because they're built very sturdy. He actually gave it to Nintendo, and for about 30 years, it was on display in the New York City Nintendo store, just still showing off that Tetris home screen. They had it plugged into the wall, obviously, because the batteries don't last 30 years. They last a long time, but they don't last 30 years. I actually just missed my opportunity to see this. I think they like removed this from that store like the summer before I visited New York for the first time, so I'm a little bummed I didn't get to actually see this there.
Where's it at now? Do we know? Probably with the guy. It's probably his. I mean, he owns it.
He's like, I really want to play Tetris. Guys, can I have my Game Boy back?
I'm trying to play some Tetris right now.
Yeah. I think it Nintendo has it somewhere. I don't know.
That feels like a very Smithsonian thing.
Yeah.
If they got the cartridge of Mario and Duck Hunt, they should have this guy's Game Boy too, because you got U.S. history mixed in with it. That's a big thing.
Yeah. So I ask you the question, Mike. Why did the ugliest, weakest handheld of its generation become the one that survives a literal bombing? I assume the wreckage of this event includes Sega Game Gears, Atari Lynxes, and other handhelds. Those ones didn't work, obviously. We pulled those from the wreckage. They didn't work. But the Game Boy
barely worked already.
Yeah.
Boom roasted.
Got them. Nice. Now they're literally roasted. So to understand why that brick survived, you got to meet the man that built it. A man who started out not as an engineer, but as a repairman for machines that made playing cards. Mike, this is the multi-part story about handheld gaming, about how the ugliest, slowest, lowest tech entries into this market just keep winning. This is called Part 1, Withered Technology.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like this.
Yeah. I had some fun doing this one. So to talk about the original Game Boy, we got to talk about the man who made it. And that man's name is Gunpei Yokoi. He was hired...
Hero of the podcast.
Hero of the podcast. Rest in peace. He was hired by Nintendo in 1965 to work on repairing Hanafuda machines. Remember back when we were going through the broad history of Nintendo and how for like 100 years, Nintendo just made playing cards, Hanafuda cards?
Oh, yeah. Remember, I got the book right here still.
Yeah. You get a lot of mileage out of being able to pull that book out.
I got so much mileage out of pulling this book into the screen here, so this is good.
So that's what Nintendo was working on prior to becoming the most important company in video gaming history. They had done a lot of things, but their bread and butter was Hanafuda cards, which was, like I said, a type of playing card made popular in Japan. Gunpei Yokoi liked tinkering with things. He was a bit of a car guy, specifically import cars. Most cars in Japan are right-hand drive because they drive on the left side of the road. But Yokoi famously drove a left-hand drive car in Japan. He was that guy, I guess, and I promise that this will be relevant in a little bit here.
It feels relevant already. I mean, I just want to learn everything I can about Gunpei Yokoi.
Yeah, he was like that guy who's driving like some sort of import car. He's driving on the other side. Well, he's driving on the correct side of the road for Japan, but on the other side of the car.
Yeah. See, I'm not going to exaggerate when I say this too. This might be my favorite person in gaming history.
Dang.
Because Gunpei Yokoi made so much cool stuff, just Tinker invented stuff that everyone just takes for granted today.
Yep.
I love it.
That's just kind of all he did. So he's one of those guys that can't seem to sit still. He's really, really good at his job. And that gives him like some extra brain power to sort of think about other things, right? And as we were saying, he is an inventor at heart. And one of the most important things he invents is just something that he himself thought would be fun. An extending arm that can grab things and pick them up off the ground. It's kind of a simple thing. We've all seen these things today. Like it's like an accordion-shaped sort of scissoring device with a grabber on the end that lets you just pick things up that are just out of reach.
Like kind of like people like pick up trash with it, right? Yeah. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of. It works a little bit differently than how those things work today, but like general idea, I think is.
It makes it so you don't have to bend down.
Yeah.
Right. That's like the point of it, right?
Yes,
yeah.
It solves the same problem. So I say most important invention in a particular way because this device itself doesn't really do anything for the greater good. It's just kind of a fun little invention that I'm sure some kids and probably old people find very useful. But one fateful day, Hiroshi Yamauchi, also a friend of the podcast,
Friends,
he's
I guess.
the president of Nintendo at the time. He saw what Yokoi was working on, and he immediately saw an opportunity to build a toy for the holiday rush, because that's probably why he's president of Nintendo, is he sees ways to make money off of things. This is a huge hit. They make this extending arm. They sell it. It sells 1.2 million copies, and it gets Yokoi off of the production line and into product development.
I think I found it. It's called the Ultra Hand.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
There it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, the book's falling apart, but that's what it looks like to all the people watching on video.
Yeah.
It looks like this.
Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So-
I gotta get this book rebound.
From here, Gunpei Yokoi works on a few different things. He works on, so that's the Ultra Hand, like you said. He works on the Ultra Machine, which was a device that would launch like balls at you that you could hit with a bat, kind of like a pitching machine for kids, I think. He invented a device called the Love Tester, which was supposed to tell you how much connection there is between the two people using this device.
Oh my gosh. We should get love testers as a segment and have our respective partners hold on to it and see if we actually love them and base our entire relationships off this toy from the 60s.
This is a great idea. I thought you were going to say we should test it. We should do the Love
Well,
Tester.
no, well, we should actually, I take it all back. We should do it with our respective partners, and then you and I should do
Yes.
it and hope it's more compatible.
Yeah, so these are the sort of like novelty items that like interested kids mostly. Honestly, the stuff on its own is a pretty decent career for a toy designer to have like a few different like toys that work out for you. Like that's pretty cool. But that's not what elevated him to legendary status. That would come next. Before we get to the Game Boy, we got to talk about its more direct predecessor. So let's do a quick primer on the Game & Watch system or systems. I think it should be plural.
It should be
Right?
plural, I
'Cause there's
think,
like
but
there's a
here's
bunch of them. Yeah.
there's a bunch of them, but I'm going to be honest. This is a glaring hole in my knowledge of Nintendo. I don't know anything about Game & Watch except for Mr. Game & Watch from Super Smash Brothers.
Which we are an expert on Smash Brothers, apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. Okay. Picture it. Japan, the late 1970s. Gunpei Yokoi is riding on a train because, like most places that aren't the Western United States, Japan has a pretty good public transportation system. In the before times, train rides were always pretty boring. They still are, but they used to be too. Maybe you read a book or a magazine, or you used that time to get some writing done. But mostly you couldn't do anything. I think we've all been there. There's nothing to do in whatever place you are, so you just sort of go through the things that you have on you and just mess with them. Or maybe people our age remember this because now you just pull out your phone and scroll. But back in the day, you just be like, well, what's in my backpack? I guess I'm just going to see what's in my backpack. You just sort of
Before
like go,
phones.
Yeah, you just go through them, you start messing with everything. So Yokoi noticed that businessmen on these trains were often fiddling with their little pocket calculators, which were a relatively new device at the time. And this sparked a thought in his head. What if this was a game? One of the things I find so funny about this, in all things I've read about how Yokoi sort of has these thoughts about like, well, your hands are already in front of you, so it's a natural way to play a game. And I just laugh because it's funny to me that somebody would have to think of this before developing something. Like, yeah, I guess you're right. Like for us, it's a given that like, yeah, you hold something in front of you when you play a game that like that obviously makes sense. But like somebody had to think of that, see that, and go, your hands are already where you might be able to hold on to something. And so we should build something that you could put in your hands.
This is a whole idea that could go on a tangent about how you have like there's people that think like that go all the way down to the very basic level, versus it's like that thing they would have you do in school. I don't know if you remember this, but it would like your science teacher would often do it where they'd be like, write me instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah.
And then they would do everything you say super literally because you're not starting right away. And then they would mess it all up. And that was the point of the exercise. I feel like Gunpei Yokoi is going way back.
Yeah.
He's going to the very base level.
Yeah. Well, and probably if you thought about like, well, how could we do a game on a train? You'd be like a board game? Would we have to include a table? Like, what are they going to put it on? What if the train goes over a bump? Like you can't play games on a train, right?
Yeah.
And so it'd be like, okay, but maybe you could do it electronically. I don't know. It's just funny to think of like, yeah, your hands are already in the right place to do that. Like it's just so obvious to us now, but somebody had to think of it. So anyway, he had the idea, but he didn't have it. He didn't quite think about it all the way through. He was just like, oh yeah, that'd be kind of neat. And it just kind of filed away in the back of his mind, which I assume he would do all the time. He probably just had tons of ideas like this where he's like, yeah, there's probably something there. I'll just like file it away and like, maybe I'll think about it again someday. Maybe I won't. But soon after this, he would get his chance opportunity to pitch this idea to Yamauchi himself. So in those days, Yamauchi's company car that he'd be driven around in was an imported Cadillac from the United States. It was a left-hand drive car. And on one day, his driver was sick and couldn't drive him to an important meeting at the Osaka Plaza Hotel. So they asked Yokoi to take him, but since they knew that he could drive a car like that. He could have refused because at this point he was like high enough up in the company that like he could have taken this as maybe sort of an insult of like, what, you're going to make me drive someone around for my job, right? But he agreed to because he's like, well, this is cool. I'll get to talk to the president, and also I am the only person here who can drive this car, so I guess I'll just do it. So it's a good thing he didn't take offense to it because he totally could have. But on that car ride, he took that opportunity to talk about this idea that he'd had on the train, a small calculator-sized device that was designed to play a game, something those businessmen could use on the train to kill time. Normally at a toy company, they find that bigger toys sell better, just like physically larger toys. But Yokoi thought this one might do better if it were smaller, more discreet, could fit in a bag, maybe a pocket, that kind of thing. And as luck would have it, two other companies were in a fierce battle at this time. Those two companies were Sharp and Casio. Those should be familiar company names to most people these days, I think. But in the 70s, they were in the heated battle of pocket calculators because, like I said, those were pretty new. And so there was like a pretty big competition there. And as a result of this competition, the LCD screens that powered those devices were just getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And the screens themselves weren't really able to do much, but all they had to do was display numbers on a calculator, and they were cheap now. So once he got to that meeting at Osaka Plaza Tower, luck would have it that Yamauchi, so there's like a lot of lucky things that had to happen here. Yamauchi sitting next to the president of Sharp, and he mentioned Yokoi's idea to him, and a week later, there were Sharp executives at Nintendo's headquarters ready to work out a deal for some screens. This, like, the amount of, like, luck that...
Oh, yeah.
Like, what if his driver just wasn't sick that day or decided to power through? No Game Boy.
No Game Boy.
We'd be in just like the whole world would be so different right now. And I love that like bit of lore behind the meaning of the word Nintendo, right? Leave luck to heaven, because of just how crucial luck was in the development of Nintendo's gaming dominance. The luck of Yokoi to have his invention seen by the president of Nintendo, for him to see the potential there too, because he could have just been like, that's a dumb idea, and then not done anything with it. The luck of him to have seen the people on the train to even spark the idea. The luck that he was the only guy who could drive the president around when his normal driver was sick. The luck of him Yamauchi sitting next to the president of Sharp at that meeting. What if there was someone in between them? Then it could have been Casio or could have been nobody, right? Just so many things all happening by basically random chances like crazy, and part of why we live in the world that we live in today. And like, I just think like how many other things in life are just like down to that like level of luck, like good things and bad things, you know? I think that's just interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool.
About. Yeah. It turned out to be really great for Sharp because they had ramped up their LCD production lines for this calculator war with Casio. But demand for the screens was starting to drop off, and they had all this capacity for building LCD screens, but nothing to use it. But Yokoi's game machine was going to be perfect for this production capability. So the first use of these screens by Nintendo was in 1980 with the release of the first Game & Watch console. This game is called Ball. And you can play this game if you have a Game Boy camera because Ball is included as one of the mini games. It's also often seen in various mini game collections that Nintendo puts out, like WarioWare usually has references to Ball. The Game & Watch Gallery, Game Boy games that like put a few different Game & Watch games into like one compilation cartridge. I think the first one has Ball. Like this is like basically the first sort of like video game that Nintendo makes, I guess. And there's probably other examples, but I can't think of any right now. The Game & Watch series would go on to sell over 43 million units in total across more than 60 games. It's important to remember this is not a cartridge-based console. You bought a new system for every game that you wanted to play. So that's a lot of space if you love Game & Watch, and it's a lot of redundant hardware just to play different kinds of games. So I do want to take a quick detour here to talk about one of the most important inventions to gaming that came as part of the Game & Watch series, and that is the D-pad or the directional pad.
Ooh, directional pad. This is big.
Again, this is another one of those things that like you look at a game controller and you think, yes, of course it has a D-pad. You need, like, how else are you going to control a game? It needs to have that. But somebody had to think of it and somebody had to invent it, right? It was so ubiquitous that it seems like crazy that it even had to be invented at all. But in those early days of gaming, control schemes were still being figured out at a base level. I mean, look at the Atari with its joystick, right? Or the ColecoVision with its like, number pad thing with the dial. You know what I'm talking about? It's
weird.
Terrible. Yeah.
Those old like twist dial. Yeah.
How did anybody control anything with that? But because they didn't have the vocabulary to do this. They were still figuring these things out, which is just so funny. Like everything had to be invented, you know, the stuff didn't always exist. And it came about because of a very practical constraint. So the Game & Watch had to be flat in order to stay portable. So putting a full joystick on a device meant to be carried around and pulled out quickly and discreetly to kill time was kind of a non-starter. So that's how Yokoi invented the D-pad, because it's flat. First seen on the 1982 Game & Watch release of the original Donkey Kong. Also, podcast producer Toby is here.
Toby's here.
I got to get him out of here. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're not going to edit this part out, though, because we all need to see Toby on camera. Can you pull Toby up so we can at least look at his pretty face? Thank you. Hello, Toby. Look at his cameo. Gosh, we love Toby. Toby's famous, by the way, listener, if you don't know, for turning Tyler's computer off in the middle of anything. So that's why Tyler has to get him out of the room. It's not because he doesn't like Toby. It's because Toby will turn his computer off. And he's very good at that.
That is true. That is true. I have one of those computer cases where the button is like flat on top. And of course it's warm on top. And my cat likes to lay down on top of the computer. And, you know, sometimes he pushes the button. So,
I like to think he does it on purpose. So
he tells me it's not on purpose, but I don't know, man.
It's on purpose.
So, yeah, anyway. So I'll back up a little bit. So this came about because of a very practical constraint. The Game & Watch had to be flat in order to stay portable. Putting a full joystick on the device meant to be carried around and pulled out discreetly to kill time was just kind of a non-starter. So that's how Yokoi invented the D-pad, first seen on the 1982 Game & Watch release of the original Donkey Kong, which got a home portable version, which I think is very cool.
Wait, so this is like the one where you go up as Jumpman as you run up the building? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And since then, the D-pad has been standard on almost every controller ever made. It's also extremely versatile, being useful on almost every type of game that you can think of, right? Like a D-pad, you know, we sort of upgraded to joysticks later on, but the D-pad remains like a staple of, you can't have a controller that doesn't have a D-pad on it, right? And now that controls for games were becoming somewhat standardized in the Game & Watch days, we're starting to see the invention of the most important entry in the handheld gaming history. And you know what I'm talking about? I'm going to drag it out a little bit for dramatic effect.
Drag it out for drama. Right?
We're talking about the Game Boy. The Game Boy. Sorry, my mic like cut out for a second, I think. So the Game & Watch had a very real ceiling, one real structural flaw. Each unit only played one game that was hardwired into the console. So if you want to get a new game, you had to buy a whole new device. And so once you had a couple of them, then it kind of became hard to sell someone more of them because they took up so much space. You're just like, I already have so many of these. And then once the controls started being standardized between games, it was pretty clear there's a lot of redundancy here too, right? Like I got like 6 different handhelds and they're all more or less the same. They just have a different game on them. That seems silly, and there's probably a better way to do this, right? Like imagine having to buy a new Switch every time you wanted to play a different game. You're like, well, all right, I guess I'll just put my Zelda Switch down and I'll get out my Star Fox Switch, right? Like that would be kind of insane to have to do that. But that's basically what was happening here. And it was getting increasingly harder to keep selling these things when people already had so many. I mean, if you wanted to have 60 Game & Watch consoles, that's a lot of space. So they had to figure something else out. So in 1983, Nintendo released the Famicom for the home, the family computer, also known as the NES in North America. It had interchangeable cartridges for much the same reason. Controls and hardware were standardized, as was the display. The only difference between the games was the software on the cartridge, and Nintendo didn't need to sell, nor did people want to buy a whole new set of hardware for each game. The Famicom obviously wasn't the first home console with software on a cartridge. That honor goes to the Fairchild Channel F, of course.
Ooh, which we've talked about before.
Yes. But it was pretty clear that like this was the future. And for a portable device, space was at a premium. So it would have been hard to bring more than one of these devices with you everywhere you would go. You just would have to pick a game and be like, this is the one I'm taking with me because I'm not packing 6 of these things, right? Plus, it let Nintendo have larger margins on software because cartridges were much cheaper to produce than a whole system. And so you could sell a platform. You buy the console and then buy the games to go with it. Milton Bradley tried this briefly with their handheld, the Microvision, but that handheld was probably a little bit ahead of its time. The games weren't great, that is always the thing. It's the system that wins is always the one that has the better games. Always. You do not win based on specs. And the hardware of the Microvision was expensive and fragile. But Satoru Okada, the head of Nintendo Research and Engineering at the time, said that the Microvision was a direct inspiration for the Game Boy. Basically, they saw that and they were like, this is a good idea, but somebody has to come along and do it right. And boy, did they. And that's a name that I actually hadn't heard while doing the research on this. Satoru Okada and Gunpei Yokoi actually differed heavily on what they thought the Game Boy should be. Yokoi originally wanted it to be like kind of like an advanced Game & Watch with interchangeable cartridges, but he wanted them to be like the same kinds of games because these are all like very small games, right? We're talking smaller than Tetris. Like the ball game is literally just juggling. Like Donkey Kong is Donkey Kong, right? Like these are so small. Those are the kinds of games that Gunpei Yokoi wanted on this thing. He wanted them to be quick to play, quick to forget, according to Okada, which is how he described them. But Okada wanted a device with a little bit more vision than that. He wanted a platform where he could make larger games, more like what was available on the Famicom. He wanted third-party developers to be able to make games as well. That was not something that Gunpei Yokoi was interested in. And that led to much better documentation on how the system works, especially compared to the Famicom, which had basically no documentation for third-party developers. They were like, yeah, you can make games if you want, but like we're not going to tell you how to do it. And on the Game Boy, they decided, you know what, we will actually help people, help other developers make games on this because they're starting to realize that like, oh, we can take a cut of games being sold on our system, and that sounds like an easy way to make money without having to actually make games. And although,
you love it.
But Nintendo would make lots of games, obviously. Yokoi disagreed with the platform approach, but eventually he relented and let Okada make the device that he wanted to make. So when we say things like Gunpei Yokoi is the father of the Game Boy, that's true in a strict sense, but we are also doing history a little bit of a disservice because it sounds like Okada was instrumental in the Game Boy becoming the platform that it was, at least on a technical level. So we should be sure to give Okada his flowers here as well. Yokoi was not just some like lone genius off in a cave developing consoles from boxes of scraps. You know, his instinct to use old technology still stands, and that was a good move, and is an extremely important piece of the puzzle as to why the Game Boy was so much more successful than its technologically superior contemporaries. But we gotta make sure that Okada gets his flowers here too, because I think if we had gone with Yokoi's vision of the Game Boy, it may have just disappeared. We may not have done this, right? So let's talk about those hardware differences between the Game Boy and some of its like more powerful contemporaries. It's true that the Game Boy released before its competitors. The Atari Lynx came out in 1989 in Japan. The Game Gear and Turbo Express both followed in 1990. So it was like older just because it released sooner. But those other systems totally blew Game Boy out of the water on paper. They had color screens, faster processors, more impressive games, but they all had a couple of fundamental flaws, and these are things that a lot of them shared between them. They were extremely expensive, most of them costing twice what the Game Boy cost, and they were huge battery hogs. And in those days, battery life was even more important than it is now because there was a very real monetary cost associated with it, right? I know most of us remember these days, or at least people who are old like us remember, but it's easy to forget. Replacing AA batteries directly costs money. So the more power these devices used, the more they cost to the end user, right? If you only get 2 hours out of your 6 AA's, that's an expensive device to run in a different way than just like having to charge up something a lot. Is like, I mean, I guess technically that still costs you money, but it's not, it's kind of a rounding error, I feel like.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't cost as much as AA batteries cost. And these systems were already more expensive than the Game Boy, right? So to have to spend a few bucks every dozen or so hours replacing batteries, that adds up. And it's important to note that, what's the first thing that anybody says when they remember their Game Gear fondly? Man, those were some cool games, I guess. But I had to change 6 AA batteries every 5 hours. And like rechargeable batteries did exist then. They had some real limitations. They were themselves quite a bit more expensive than a normal set of batteries. They had like memory problems where you had to charge them to full and then deplete them completely. You could just like plug them in when it made sense. There were like a lot of like sort of downsides with rechargeable batteries at the time, and it was kind of questionable if they actually ended up saving anybody money in the end, I think. You could do some real extended gaming sessions if you bought the AC wall adapter. The original Game Boy and Game Gear, they all had like wall adapters, but then you're chained to the wall, right? Like that's you sort of like, well, I might as well be playing my Nintendo at this point, or my NES or my Famicom, right? So on paper, the Game Boy probably should have lost with lower specs, but it was cheaper. It ran for dozens of hours on just 4 AA batteries, and it would get even better with things like the Game Boy Pocket, which ran on AAA's, a couple of AAA's, and the Game Boy Color ran on a couple of AA's and got roughly the same battery life, if I recall correctly. They used a monochrome dot matrix display that had its roots in 1970s designs. It used a well-known 8-bit processor called the Sharp SM83, which was a kind of a hybrid processor between the Intel 8080 and the Zilog Z80 processor. Lots of 80s used in these, like the 8080, the Z80. I'm probably butchering like exactly how that works. I don't know the difference between these processors. But so there's somebody out there who's being like, no, those are the same thing. And maybe they are. I don't think they are, though. Both of these processors were released in the mid 1970s. So to be using them in the Game Boy almost 15 years later at a time when computer technology was advancing so rapidly was a pretty gutsy move, if you ask me. But that made it cheaper, right? Made it more power efficient. And it meant that third-party developers would potentially be working with CPU systems that they were already familiar with and already knew some tricks for. So it was friendly to the consumer, friendly to the developer, at the cost of like being, I wouldn't say slightly lower tech, but significantly lower tech, especially with it being a black and white monochrome, like pea soup green screen. But this philosophy has a name, actually, and I think Gunpei Yokoi coined this term, lateral thinking with withered technology. Say that one more time. Lateral thinking with withered technology. And it aims to maximize cheap, mature, and well-understood components in a new way rather than just try to be the best, fastest, brightest, most colorful thing. Nintendo is often doing this, but the Game Boy is where it really proved that this is a working strategy. The Famicom and NES were also made of well-known older components, but they were also competing with other devices doing the same thing. Like the Master System doesn't have much of a tech advantage over the NES, and later competitors to the NES would outdo it on paper even if they fell flat. I think the biggest reason that the strategy works for Nintendo is not because it's inherently good. Yeah, it means cheaper devices, and that's definitely good. But the real thing here, I think, is what I'm always saying, Mike. It's all about the games. The specs don't matter.
It's all about the games.
You don't play RAM. You don't play megahertz, right? You play games. And I say this as a tech guy. I love looking at specs. I think it's fun to look at the spec sheets and like imagine the possibilities. But when we play games, we're not playing the hardware. We're playing the games. And Nintendo has always been able to make good games, right? That's just...
Look at the Switch. First Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
Like, it was behind technologically with all the other ones, but it sold more than anyone else.
Yeah. Yep.
Because the games
are good. And it had a unique value proposition with its portable, basically being a portable console, which is very cool as well. But yeah, but it has the games, right? That's ultimately, it doesn't matter how cool your console is if you don't have any games. And I think this sort of thing is very apparent with the pack-in title for the Game Boy, because they could have packed in Super Mario Land, and that would have been a great call, right? Super Mario Land's a great game. We were just talking about it. But Hank Rogers at Nintendo of America convinced Minoru Arakawa to pick a different game. He convinced him to pack in Tetris. He said that Super Mario Land appeals to boys, but Tetris appeals to everyone. And he was right. It's still one of the top-selling games of all time. Tetris is one of those games like Wii Sports where somebody would just buy the system for the one game that it came with and still feel like the entire thing was worth their money, right? Or like, I spent $80, $90 on a Game Boy. I got Tetris. That's all I want. And it's cool that I could play other games, but actually I only care about Tetris. And there are so many people that bought Wiis and they never bought anything beyond Wii Sports. They were like, yeah, dude, that was a great deal. I love Wii Sports. So I just think that's really cool that their pack-in games have often been so good that they're worth it on their own. So the philosophy works, and it works so well that it becomes a major pillar of Nintendo's strategy even to this day. When they stick to this philosophy, they generally do better. I think the GameCube was like the last time they really pushed specs, right? And while that's a beloved system with some great games, it definitely came in third place out of 3 in that generation of consoles. But the Wii, like I said, still Nintendo's highest selling home console after the original Switch. And we all know how it compared to the 360 and PS3 during that generation, at least from a power standpoint. Like there was no contest there, and they weren't trying to claim that it was anything more than it was, right? The strategy did not work for the Wii U. That's another story for another time. I think there were more things wrong with the Wii U than just being a little bit technologically behind its contemporaries. But with their next portable system, let's go back to the 90s here. With their next portable system, they would issue this philosophy in the chase of technology. And it didn't go very well. I'm talking, Mike, of course, about the Virtual Boy.
Oh, the Virtual Boy. Are we going to talk about the Virtual Boy?
Well, we won't spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to make sure that we don't miss it. I think it would be fun to do a whole episode on the Virtual Boy, but for now, we'd leave it a few things. I'm kind of surprised we haven't. I did a search because we have so many episodes now. I'm like, what have we done versus what have we just talked about doing? I don't think we've done Virtual Boy.
I would, if we did the Virtual Boy, I would want to get my hands on an actual Virtual Boy because I've never seen one in real life or played one no, I've never messed with it. I don't know anything about it really.
They're pretty cool. So, I remember playing the display one at like a Target when it was new and being like, what is this? I
just know they hurt your brain after a bit, right?
They do. Yeah. And the red lights in them, like your eyes become desensitized to them and then you can't see red for a little while afterwards. It's like, yeah, it's like if you like stare at a bright light, you know how it like sort of messes your eyeballs up for a little bit.
I really want to play one now that you really sold it to me.
Yeah, super fun. So we'll leave it at a few things here, but I do want to say a few things about the Virtual Boy because it is a case study in when Nintendo doesn't do the lateral thinking with Withered technology, that it does not work out for them. So this was a portable system, and I'm saying that in air quotes. It had a full controller. You put it up to your eyes like a VR headset, but it was released in the summer of 1995 in North America and Japan. So this is real early VR stuff. It was a 32-bit system, so there was a little bit of spec chasing here. Back in the 90s, it was all about the bits, right? It had 2 monochrome red displays that showed a different image to each eye. This was like its gimmick, right? Is that it sort of simulated this 3D effect that honestly did not work very well. And it not only did it not work very well, but it was also like, it's like, why? This wasn't even enabling anything. It's like the games are not even that cool, right? Like that's a problem. And the Virtual Boy had the problem of no good games, except for maybe Mario Tennis. I don't know. That is where the first Mario Tennis came, I believe, as well. It was neat as like a tech demo, but it didn't really allow for anything cool to be done with the games, and it was expensive. So the Virtual Boy only shipped 800,000 units in total, and they ended the production run in 1996 after releasing just 22 games. So that was a failure. And after the Virtual Boy failure, Gunpei Yokoi left to start his own adventure called RoccoW, and he helped design the Bandai WonderSwan, which is another handheld from that era that really didn't do much, famous for getting very good 16-bit ports of the first 2 Final Fantasy games, which were then ported to the PSP. And some will still say those are the best versions of those 2 games. So, hey, the WonderSwan had that going for it, I guess. Also, in my research, this is just worth bringing up here. I found that there was a rumor that Gunpei Yokoi was killed by the Yakuza. So apparently Nintendo has or had ties with the Yakuza back in the day. This is unconfirmed, of course, obviously. But Gunpei Yokoi was leaving to start his own company, and then he was killed in a car accident. And apparently those things all together, it's fishy enough to some people that are like, somebody would have had motivation to do this, right? He's got lots of secrets. He's going to work for a competitor or start a competitor. Maybe Nintendo had him whacked. But it's just a rumor that is not substantiated. But apparently, Yakuza would often use cars, like when they're doing hits like this, they would use cars to do it. So it's like it fits the MO, I guess. So anyway, I thought that was like worth mentioning. I wanted to say funny here. It's not really funny, but I do think it's kind of worth
definitely
mentioning.
Conspiracy theory, though. Well, you don't really get a lot of video game conspiracy theories like this. And this is a very real one, you know, because it involves someone dying, which you're like, oh,
yeah. And,
wow.
And if you read the stories or like the account of how the accident happened. So what happened to Gunpei Yokoi was he was in a car driving somewhere. I don't think it matters where. They got kind of into like a little accident, like a sort of fender bender. Somebody like rear-ended him or something like that. And so they pulled off to the side of the road. They're getting out. They're going to inspect the damage. And he gets hit by a car. Like he's like getting out of his car. He gets hit, like sideswiped by another car that's driving by as he's like inspecting the damage on his car. And so that's why people are like, they tried one and then it didn't work. So they had another one ready to go and they hit him with that one and that worked. So I don't know if the Yakuza does things like that. But anyway, it's like he wasn't hit in a car accident in his car. He was getting out of his car from another car accident that he was just in. And then that's when he was fatally struck.
Dude, this is kind of wild. Like and I'm not really prone to conspiracy theories, if I'm being honest, but this seems like one that would be worth looking into.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So also, though, still a hero of the podcast.
Yep. Rest in peace, buddy.
We just talked about him last week with the light gun, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
he invented so many things.
I know. Really, really wonderful person.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hitting the end of this episode. And I guess here's what I'll leave us with, Mike. The Game Boy didn't win because it was the highest tech machine. It won because it was the best machine that understood what it's for. And if cheap hardware was a limitation on games, then the software had to get clever. And next time, we will talk about a kid who liked catching bugs, a cable between 2 pockets, and a game that revived a dying console. You know what I'm talking about. But what I want to talk about now, Mike, is what you've been playing.
Oh, man. Way to leave us on a suspenseful note. I've been playing a couple different games. I've been playing Diablo 4.
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing that the most, probably, if I'm being honest. You and I played Battlefield 6 last night and had a ton of fun.
Yeah, we
That was
won
really
all of our
fun.
games too.
We did. We're kind of an unstoppable military force in the electronic wars of Battlefield 6. And then I haven't really touched Death Stranding that much as I'd want to. If I'm being honest, I just kind of fell off a little bit and I got into Diablo 4 instead because I was playing Diablo 4 with people, which is way more fun to play it with friends.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but yeah, it's been pretty good. So what have you been playing this week?
I put a lot of time into Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm trying to replay that and Rebirth before Revelation comes out in February, and I'm kind of slow at playing through games sometimes, so I wanted to get started early because I know Rebirth, I put a lot of time into that the first time around. I don't know if I'll do it as much as I did the first time around in my second playthrough, but I am playing it on Steam instead of on PS5, so I don't have any sort of like New Game Plus stuff, which would have been nice, but I don't think there's a way to move save files between PlayStation and PC. So that's what I've been playing. Played some Battlefield with you. We finished the Renegades campaign.
Oh yeah, we
in
did that
Destiny
too.
as
We
well.
finished that. I'm going to be honest. That was a big, I wouldn't say letdown, but I would say it was like classic Destiny campaign where it's like, we got to have an end, but we can't really have an end because there might be more in the future. It felt like that.
Yeah, we
like,
need
that's
to
kinda
give
what
you
it
stuff
felt
to
like.
grind for, so like the story's not over here.
Exactly. Yeah, because you don't end up killing the big bad evil guy. You kill the big bad evil guy's buddy, and then it just kind of like leaves you hanging a little bit.
Yep. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing. Most of my gaming time I've been putting into Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But that's, you know what, man? This is great. I like it. Most talked about the Game Boy today, a little virtual boy fun.
We'll talk
a little small internet conspiracy theory with video game people.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll talk a little bit more about Game Boy stuff in part 2, but we're going to focus a little bit more on the software side of like what games were great. So
we're gonna catch all those games. You know what I'm saying? All right, cool. Well, if you want to support our podcast, you can tell your friends about us. That's also as helpful. It is a free thing you can do. You can also, if you want to, leave us a positive review on Apple or Spotify. That helps us out a ton. You could also go to codexpodcast.net. That's our website that has all our links on there. You can look at our Trello boards, which we do update of what we've been playing.
Yeah.
You could look at our Discord. Oh, go ahead.
I did have one more thing I played. I played through all of Mixtape in kind of one afternoon because it's a short game. Speaking of Trello, because I added it directly to the done board because I finished it so fast that I didn't even put a card in my playing section.
You made a good point about it, though, that you said that if it was about nostalgia 10 years later, it would have hit with you hard.
Yeah. That's my main like criticism, and it's not a real criticism of the game, is that like I think the nostalgia that people are loving about the game and all the music going on, if they had said it 10 years later and used songs that made sense for that time period, then it probably would have really hit the same way for me that it has been for people about 10 years older than us. So
what was it, like 97? Is that when it was set?
I think it's set in 99, like the summer of 99.
So I was 11 years old. So I was getting close to the age of like teenager then, but not really.
Yeah. And it's very much the story is like the three friends of like, this is our last hurrah before we all split up after high school and go our separate ways. And so this is one perfect night. And the main character, her whole deal is that she wants to be a music director at like a radio station. And so she's like, for this perfect night, I'm picking the playlist and like, we are going to remember it forever. And then of course, you know, things do not go according to plan the whole time. And there's a lot of great, just like teenager shenanigans happening. So
everyone loves teenage shenanigans. Yep. That's a prime thing in movies and in pop culture. So there you go. Awesome. Well, yeah, go ahead and do all those things I talked about before with the podcast. That'd be great. Or send us an email, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You got a contact form on the website too. And with that, Tyler, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
I would like to say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye, everybody.